It is Sunday, the 9th of April, 2017. I'm in front of the Unitarian Church, Montreal. I'm just entering into the second hour or so of my protest against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy. I was in the middle of a monologue about how the Gazette has obstinately refused to report some newsworthy aspects of the issues I'm protesting against, most recently refusing to report on the fact that the Unitarian Universalist Association has misused Canada's blasphemy law and clergy sex abuse cover-up illegal bullying. And so we're just going to continue on from where I left off. So I finally got through to Lucinda Churan, the Gazette's editor, on the phone, I guess about a week and a half or possibly 2 weeks ago now. Can't remember the exact date. But yeah, I'd say 2 weeks ago, maybe possibly 3 weeks. It was on a Monday, so we're not, it was like either 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. It wasn't less, I mean, it wasn't less than 2 weeks. It wasn't more than 3 weeks. It was within the last month. And so I get Lucinda Churan on the phone and I tell her, you know, the information that she needs to know about the Unitarian Universalists misusing blasphemy law to hide pedophilia and rape committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers. And she expresses considerable skepticism in her initial response. She said that my claims were unprovable, which is complete bullshit. Anyone who bothers to examine my claims will find that everything I'm saying is supported by solid evidence. But, you know, in her mind, you know, what I'm claiming is unprovable, or at least she was pretending to believe that. Maybe she knew perfectly well they were provable, but was just lying through her teeth. You know, she's either just guilty of two possibilities. She's guilty of incredibly incompetent ignorance on the part of someone who's supposed to be a journalist, or she's lying. Take your pick, I don't care. Either way, she's not doing her job as an editor of the Gazette. She's not sharing with the public. She's not helping the public to exercise their right to know about the fact that the Unitarian Universalists have a clergy sex abuse problem and that they misuse Canada's blasphemy law and legal bullying intended to hide such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So either way, Lucinda Churan is at best incompetent, or at worst actually guilty of colluding with Unitarian Universalist cover-up and denial of pedophilia and rape. She's had plenty of time to verify the facts, and in any case, in response to her claim, you know, that my claims were unprovable, in the phone conversation I gave her more than enough information to show that, well, that just wasn't the case, and in fact everything I'm saying is supported by evidence, i.e. the clergy sex abuse I'm talking about is supported by evidence, but also the fact that I've been falsely accused of blasphemous libel by the Unitarian Universalist Association is also supported by evidence, not the least of it being the actual cease and desist demand letter that I was served with in June of 2012. So everything's truthful, everything's supported by evidence. And, you know, I sent Lucinda Churan an email providing links to blog posts and so on, and that again, you know, further solidified that everything was truthful and supported by evidence. And she actually responded by again expressing skepticism. She, in response to my first email, she said that, you know, she'd looked at the blog posts and she hadn't found any evidence supporting what I was telling her. Which is, again, ridiculous, because there was evidence in the blog posts themselves. In fact, what I did in response to that is I said, well, here's a copied and pasted section from the blog post that my third link linked to, and it's got more than enough evidence in it that you can fact check about Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell being convicted of raping teenage Tibetan refugees, and also Richard Buell being convicted of raping preteen girls, including a female family member. So you can go fact check all that stuff. You can find that it's been reported in American newspapers very easily. Newspapers have access to newspaper databases that they're not, publicly available. So Lucinda Churan, just in terms of newspaper databases, is in a position to quickly verify the facts about anything that's been reported in newspapers about Unitarian Universalist clergy sex abuse. So, I said, look, everything's true. Here's the evidence. Please assign a reporter to report this story. Ideally, an investigative journalist, who's competent to do a spotlight type story. Well, of course she didn't. It's now been at least 3 weeks to a month since I reapproached the Gazette to finally report on the Unitarian Universalist Association misusing blasphemy law to hide pedophilia and rape, and it hasn't done it. It's had plenty of opportunity to... you can take all the pictures you want, sir, and video, and you can put it on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. It's What? Well, you should, because everything I'm saying is true. Right, well, lots of people are married in the Roman Catholic Church too, sir. Yeah, so same kind of problem. But you know what? The Catholics aren't stupid enough to misuse Canada's blasphemy law and legal bullying intended to hide pedophilia and rape. So the Unitarians are actually worse than the Catholics in some ways. Just Google Unitarians and blasphemous libel. So this guy's taking photos and maybe video, I think it was photos, with his cell phone. And so I tell him, you can put that up on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, whatever you want. And he goes, oh, I wouldn't want to, make this more known than it already is. That's not his exact words, but that's essentially what he's saying. He wanted to, get a record of it, but he didn't want to share this with the public. It's kind of interesting. It's like very much in line with what I'm talking about with the Gazette right now. This guy knows about my protest. He's taken pictures of my picket signs, which say Unitarian Universalists misuse blasphemy law to cover up and deny pedophilia and rape. But when I tell him, hey, you can put that on the internet, I don't mind, he tells me to my face, oh, no, I don't want to publicize this more than it already is. I don't want to make this known to the public any more than it is. I want to, basically he wants to help Unitarians hide it. And why? Oh, because his mother was married in the Unitarian Church or something like that. So this is exactly the same dynamic, I think, as what's happening with the Gazette. This guy has a relative who was married in the Unitarian Universalist Church. Therefore, he doesn't want to embarrass the Unitarians, by telling, letting this protest be known. And that's pretty much the same thing in the Gazette. The Gazette actually has at least 3 or 4 employees or former employees who are members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. Mark Abley, Words columnist. Harvey Shepard, former religion columnist. Sue Montgomery, former justice reporter for the Montreal Gazette. And there's one other member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal who I believe had an administrative role at the Gazette. I'm not going to name her because I'm not totally sure about exactly what her relationship with the Gazette is, but I have very, very reasonable grounds to believe that this person is also a former employee or possibly even a current employee of the Gazette, but in an administrative capacity rather than as a journalist. But no, we're talking, we can leave her right out of this, although not really, because she's almost certainly involved in attempts to prevent this from getting into the Gazette. But we'll leave her out of the equation of the fact that there's 3 former Gazette journalists, or I think one's still a Gazette journalist, who are actual members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, who, any one of them at some point could have reported about these issues in their own capacity, but didn't. And you can be pretty sure that, I think it's reasonable to conjecture that they've used whatever influence they can to basically ensure that the Gazette does not report this, because the Gazette hasn't. The Gazette has had plenty of opportunity to report this story, and they haven't done so. So we shall continue. Okay, the wind got one of the picket signs. We'll continue our little protest, but not for too much longer, because it's a beautiful sunny day, and I really do have other things I could be doing, including uploading these videos to YouTube, which I may or may not want to do on a nice sunny day.